Massive objects are moving through Saturn's rings, and the Pentagon may have just let the secret slip. A 2,000-mile-long entity is drifting in the darkness, and it looks like something built, not natural. A strange blue beam is shooting out of it, pulling energy from Saturn in ways we don't even understand. This isn't a drill. The data shows it's nearly 400 miles wide. You might think it's just a moon, but it's glowing, and it's moving on its own. A giant ship? Saturn is a giant ball of gas that sits nearly 900 million miles away from the Sun. Most people think of it as a beautiful planet, with pretty rings made of ice. But here is the catch. The Pentagon has been watching something else in that system for a long time. New footage shows an object that is 2,000 miles long. This distance is similar to the gap between New York and Los Angeles. The object is a solid, glowing structure that stands apart from typical moons or asteroids. Scientists report it is 400 miles wide, which makes it larger than many of the moons in that area. It was discovered in the shadows of the rings and appears to have a metallic exterior. The object moves with intent and changes the behavior of the ring particles. Data analysts have found that it possesses magnetic properties that reach across thousands of miles. It has the appearance of a vehicle designed for a specific task. Some observers think it functions as a base, while others believe it is a ship meant for travel between stars. Government agencies knew about this object for decades before sharing the news. The Pentagon calls it a luminous entity, because its brightness in the cold dark remains a mystery. Saturn measures 74,898 miles across its middle. Even in a place that large, the object is very visible. It stays near the rings, which span 186,000 miles. These rings consist mainly of ice and are extremely thin, measuring only 30 feet thick in some locations. Compared to the size of the planet, the rings are thinner than a piece of paper. This makes a 2,000-mile-long ship easy to identify with advanced cameras. The Pentagon used special sensors to follow the craft as it navigated the ring system. It moved at high speeds with a specific path. What most people do not realize is that there might be more than one of these things. Some reports say there are dozens of smaller ones too, but the 2,000-mile-long one is the king of them all. It looks like a giant cigar or a cylinder. It does not have wings or engines like a plane. Instead, it seems to use electromagnetism to move. This allows it to glide through the rings without hitting any of the ice chunks. These ice chunks range from the size of a grain of sand to the size of a large house. The ship just pushes them aside with an energy field. Everyone is obsessed with finding life on other planets, but we might have found a giant alien city instead. The data from the Pentagon includes images that show the ship emitting energy. This energy looks like a yellowish cloud that flows out of the ends of the craft. This cloud then mixes with the rings. It is like the ship is adding material to the rings or fixing them. This is why some researchers call these things ring makers. They believe the rings of Saturn are not natural at all. They think they are a giant machine or a shield built by someone else. And that is putting it lightly, because if this is true, it means someone has been in our solar system for a long time. For starters, we have to ask, who built such a massive thing? Nobody expected this to happen, but the more we look, the more we find. There are gaps in the rings, like the Cassini division, which is 2,900 miles wide. People used to think gravity from moons made these gaps, but the new footage shows these giant ships might be clearing the paths themselves. They use their energy fields to push the ice away and create perfect circles. It is a level of engineering that humans can only dream of. We are talking about moving trillions of tons of ice with the flip of a switch. The energy needed to do this is more than all the power plants on Earth combined. So, here is the deal with the Pentagon files. They show a world that is much more active than we thought. Saturn isn't just a quiet gas giant, it is a busy workshop for advanced technology. The ships are there, and they are working on something big. The question is why they are doing it, and what it means for us. Hands down, this is the biggest discovery in the history of space travel. But as we look closer at the machines, we find out they might be even older than we thought. Could these giant ships actually be alive in some way? A scientist named Norman Berggren was one of the first people to really study these things. He worked for NASA and had access to the photos from the Voyager missions in 1980. He looked at over 45 photographic plates and found something incredible. He saw long, cylindrical objects parked in the rings. These were not glitches in the camera. They were real physical things. Berggren called them electromagnetic vehicles, or EMVs for short. He found one that was so long it was 3 or 4 times the diameter of Earth. That would make it between 24,000 and 32,000 miles long. This makes the 2,000-mile-long object look small. Berggren noticed that these huge cylinders were often found near the gaps in the rings. He saw them streaming material out of their sides to form new ring segments. He believed these ships were actually making the rings of Saturn. Imagine a giant 3D printer in space that is the size of a planet. That is basically what these EMVs are. They take energy from the planet's magnetic field and use it to turn raw material into structured rings. One key detail is that Saturn has a very strong magnetosphere. It is trillions of times stronger than Earth's field. These ships use that power to stay afloat and do their work. The cylinders are often described as being cigar-shaped or elliptical. They are very smooth and do not have any windows or doors that we can see. Some of them are estimated to be 7,000 miles long and 2,400 miles thick. To put that in perspective, that is wider than the United States. These are not just ships. They are flying worlds. Berggren's research showed that these objects have been around for a long time. He even found records from hundreds of years ago where astronomers saw weird lights near Saturn. People like Herschel and Knight saw things they could not explain back in the 18th and 19th centuries. One of the most amazing things Berggren found was the spokes in the B-ring. These are dark, finger-like features that are 10,000 miles long. They are wider than Earth, and they rotate with the rings. But here is the catch. They move at speeds that do not match the laws of physics. They can form in less than 1 hour and span the entire width of the ring. Berggren believed these spokes were caused by the energy fields of the giant ships. The ships use static electricity to lift dust out of the rings and create these shapes. It is like they are using a giant brush to paint on the canvas of space. The total mass of the rings is about 15 quintillion, 400 quadrillion kilograms. That is a lot of ice. It is about 0.41 times the mass of the moon Mimas. Even though that sounds like a lot, it is only a tiny fraction of Saturn's total mass, about 0.25 parts per billion. This means the rings are very light compared to the planet. Because they are so light, they need constant maintenance. Without the giant ships, the rings would eventually fall apart and crash into the planet. The ships keep them in place and make sure they stay beautiful and organized. These EMVs might not be made of metal like our ships. Some people think they are biomechanical or even living beings. They might be self-replicating machines. This means they can build copies of themselves using the materials they find in space. This would explain why there are so many of them and why they are so big. They have been growing and building for billions of years. They are like a cosmic gardener tending to a garden that is millions of miles wide. The precision they use is mind-blowing. The Enki Gap is only 200 miles wide, but it is a perfect circle that stays clear all the time. A lot of people are confused about why we haven't seen these ships more clearly. The reason is that they are very good at hiding. They stay in the shadows of the rings, or they use their energy fields to bend light around them. Only high-tech cameras from probes like Cassini can see through the tricks. Cassini spent 13 years orbiting Saturn and took over 450,000 images. In those photos, we can see the ships and the work they are doing, but the government usually blurs these parts out before the public sees them. But get this, the latest leaks have not been blurred. The truth is starting to leak out, and it is bigger than anyone thought. We are looking at a system that is managed by an intelligence we can barely understand. These giant cylinders are the tools of that intelligence. They are the reason Saturn looks the way it does. But there is a secret moon that might be the key to everything. What if the ships are using a moon as a gas station? If you are building a giant ring system, you need a lot of raw material. That is where the moon Enceladus comes in. It is a small, icy world only 310 miles wide. It is one of the most interesting places in the solar system because it is active. Cassini discovered that Enceladus has giant geysers shooting out of its south pole. These geysers spray water vapor and ice particles into space at speeds of 2,000 miles per hour. This material doesn't just disappear. It goes into orbit, around Saturn, and forms the E-ring. This ring is millions of miles wide and very thin. The crazy part is how much material is coming out. Every second, about 200 kilograms of stuff is shot into space. That is enough to fill several Olympic-sized swimming pools every single hour. This has been going on for a long time. But here is the deal. Scientists recently found that this water is full of special chemicals. They found carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur. In 2023, they also found phosphates. These are the building blocks of life, and they are 100 times more common on Enceladus than they are on Earth. This moon is a treasure chest of resources. The giant ships near Saturn might be using Enceladus as a fuel station. They can fly through the plumes and collect the ice and chemicals they need. The plumes reach hundreds of miles into space, so the ships don't even have to land. They just glide through the spray and soak up the energy. There is a giant ocean hidden under the ice of Enceladus. This ocean is about 20 miles deep, and it touches a rocky core. There are hydrothermal vents on the bottom that produce heat and energy. This is exactly the kind of environment where life can start. If the EMVs are self-replicating, they need these chemicals to build more of themselves. The phosphorus is especially important because it is used in DNA and energy transfer. By using the moon as a factory, the ships can keep working forever. They don't need to bring supplies from another star system. Everything they need is right there in the Saturn system. This is a very smart way to run a cosmic project. One of the most overlooked aspects of this is that the energy coming from Enceladus is over 1 trillion watts. That is a massive amount of power that could run a whole civilization. The plumes also contain complex organic molecules and methane. This means the ocean might be full of alien fish or microbes, but it also means it is a perfect place to manufacture high-tech parts. The giant ships can use the chemicals to create the yellowish clouds that Berggren saw in the rings. These clouds are the glue that holds the ring particles together. Without the materials from Enceladus, the rings would eventually drift away. So, the moon and the ships are working together in a perfect loop. Everyone is obsessed with finding a new Earth, but we might have found a giant alien factory instead. Many people are not seeing the truth here because they think space is empty, but the Cassini data shows it is full of activity. The probe did 294 close flybys and found over 100,000 ringlets. These are tiny subdivisions of the rings that are perfectly spaced. This level of order does not happen by accident. It is the result of constant work by the giant machines. They use the material from Enceladus to keep the ringlets in place. It is like a giant clock with millions of moving parts, and the ships are the ones who wind it up. See, the thing is that this technology is so far ahead of ours, it looks like magic. But the numbers don't lie. The amount of material being moved and the energy being used is clear in the data. The Pentagon knows this, and that is why they are watching so closely. They want to know how the ships work, and if we can use the same technology. But here's the catch. We might not be the only ones who have been changed by these visitors. Did these ancient builders have a hand in making us who we are? There was a man named Robert Dean who was a command sergeant major in the Army. He had a very high security clearance called Cosmic Top Secret. While he was working for NATO in the 1960s, he saw a document called The Assessment. This report was a study of how aliens were interacting with Earth. It said there were at least 4 different groups of visitors. Later, Dean said there might be over 100 different kinds of life forms out there. The most shocking part of his story is that some of these aliens look just like us. They could walk down the street, and you would never know they were from another planet. Dean believed that these aliens have been visiting Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. He said that, about 200,000 years ago, they stepped in and changed our DNA. They took early humans and upgraded them to make us smarter. This is why human history seems to jump forward so fast at that time. We didn't just evolve on our own. We were helped by the same beings who build the rings of Saturn. This genetic engineering created the different races and groups of people we see today. It was a giant experiment to see how we would grow and learn. The Pentagon footage of the 2,000-mile-long ship connects to this because it shows the scale of their power. If they can build a ship that big, they can easily change the DNA of a small planet. Dean's files showed that these visitors have been watching over us like parents. They stay in the shadows and watch how we use the gifts they gave us. Sometimes they show themselves in the sky as UAPs or UFOs. You might have heard of the Tic Tac incident from 2004. A 40-foot-long object was seen moving at 5,000 G-forces. It dropped 20,000 feet in less than 1 second. This is the same kind of technology that the giant ships use. Wait, let me fix that. The technology is more like a silent triangle ship. These are huge black crafts that have been seen all over the world. They can hover perfectly still and then zoom away at hypersonic speeds. They don't make any noise, and they don't have any exhaust. This is because they use gravity and electromagnetism to move. It is the same signature we see in the Saturn rings. These ships are part of a giant network that spans the whole solar system. They use Saturn as a base and Earth as a place to watch life grow. This is a key detail that ties everything together. The NATO assessment said that these beings are not a threat to us. They are just observing. But they are very concerned about our weapons. They want to make sure we don't destroy the planet they worked so hard to seed. Dean said that we are part of a galactic family, and we are the younger brothers. The giant ships near Saturn are like the family's construction equipment. They are building a home for us in the stars, but we have to be ready to join them. This is the truth that the government has been hiding for decades. So, we have these massive machines near Saturn, and we have a history of visitors on Earth. When you put it all together, It paints a picture of a universe that is full of life and intelligence. We are not alone on a lonely rock. We are part of a giant system that is being managed by builders from the stars. The 2,000-mile-long ship is just one piece of the puzzle. It is a sign that there is so much more to learn about where we came from and where we are going. The data is here, and the footage is real. It is time to stop looking at the ground and start looking at the sky. The crazy part is that we might be seeing the start of a new era. The Pentagon is slowly letting the truth out because they know they can't hide it forever. With better telescopes and more private space companies, the secret is going to break. We are going to see the ringmakers for ourselves very soon. And when we do, everything is going to change. We will have to rethink our religion, our science, and our place in the world. It's not that simple, though, because we have to ask if we are ready for the answer. What will you do when the giant ships finally show themselves to everyone? The truth about the Saturn ringmakers is more shocking than any movie. We are looking at a future where we are part of a giant cosmic family. Do you believe the government is hiding even bigger secrets about our origin? Tell us what you think in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe for more mysteries.